Ladies and gentlemen of Hashtag Nation, what would a late night be without a little bit of Bills talk after all of the chaos we've had to endure for the last 2 days of what's going on with this team? I have two gentlemen who are nice enough to devote their time to Hashtag Sports tonight. You guys know them well if you're Bills fans. We have Greg Tompsett from Cover One. His Twitter handle is right below his wonderful picture right there, so you can go give him a follow over there. And we also have Joe Sharpe from Believers Talk, who's going to be doing broadcasts with Hashtag Sports on Sportscaster come this fall for all the Buffalo Bills games. Greg and Joe, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Excited to be on. First time I've been able to be on with Joe, so looking forward to the talk tonight and going to have a lot of fun. We certainly have had an eventful weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us on. And yeah, same with Greg. First time on with him, so I'm very excited about that. And yeah, lots to talk about, so we can get started.
I just want to just right out of the gate, I want to do the sneakiness, and I want to start with you, Greg, about this. About the IR, it seems like the Buffalo Bills that if they think they may lose a guy, if they waive him or they may cut him, they may think they lose him. They put him on IR, and it's not like the league can really monitor that, can they?
Well, so I think there's a couple different pieces of that. So the first part is important because I misunderstood this a couple weeks ago when Leandrin Waddle and EJ Gaines got put on injured reserve. And I was like, oh, well, that's fine because I don't need them right now, but I'd love to have them back later in the year. And then it was clarified that you actually have to make the opening day 53 to be eligible for the designated to return thing. Teams don't have to pick out who's designated to return anymore, but you have to actually make the initial 53-man roster to be able to come back later on. So then it gets into some shenanigans. And I know it was talked about that it just happened with the Browns are doing the same thing with Greg Robinson. The Bills basically went to Kurt Coleman and were like, hey, you're a vested veteran, so if we release you, you're not exposed to waivers, but I wouldn't be shocked if maybe there's an extra $100,000 signing bonus that comes today when he signed back with the team. And they were like, hey, can we release you for a minute? Because we kind of want to hide. And when I put out the tweet on Saturday, I assumed it was going to be Voshon Joseph that they were going to be sneaky with and hide him to let him go through there and then come back. It ended up being Jason Kroom. But the criteria and the logic stays the same for either guy. For both Voshon and Jason Kroom, it's basically, hey, you're technically injured enough that the league can't come after us because you are injured. It's not up to them how long the tenure of that is. If you're not going to lobby us to get a release, when you get put on IR, you get your full salary. So Jason Kroom and Voshon Joseph just got like $500,000 to come work out for the year, hang out, be there and be around. They get to go to all the facility, which is now awesome. They get to go to all the meeting rooms and do all the film work. The only thing they can't do is practice. Everything else, they're allowed to be in the facility, in the training rooms, in the film room, in the position group meeting rooms, and you get them on the team for the year. So especially, I think they're two separate things. Voshon Joseph is more of a stash that we didn't think we could get through waivers, but he's not ready to play yet. Jason Kroom, in my mind, is more Tyler Kroft insurance that, hey, what if Kroft doesn't pan out and we're not ready for that? Now we have somebody we could bring in week 9. So yeah, it was kind of shady how they're doing it. And I wouldn't be shocked because of how many teams did this, that it doesn't come up in the CBA this coming year. I'd be surprised if it's not a factor.
I'm sure it will, but I don't know if a lot of teams will disagree with it or try to do against it because these guys are actually being able to keep their jobs, and as you said, they're able to get paid for it. Joe, should we address the elephant in the room with Jason Kroom about why he may be on this team? Or I know people have been talking about it.
Didn't they break up? I heard that they broke up. I'm not up to date on all dating rumors, but
if they broke up, I mean, I don't know, but I heard that Jason Kroom was calling up Triple H for dating advice.
It's a good.
Maybe after he made the team, they decided to call it quits. So we'll see what happens next.
So yeah, Joe, what is your take on as we transition out of here to Duke Williams? A lot of people wanted Duke Williams to make the team. They thought he impressed enough. He did show that he brings something a little bit different to the table than all these other wide receivers on the team. What was your impression of them cutting him, waiving him and exposing him to all the 31 other teams, and then the Bills end up getting him back on their practice squad?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I did a video on this when we first got Duke Williams. I know a lot of people were excited about Duke Williams, but if you look at the history of the CFL, receivers coming over, other than Joe Horn, there really hasn't been too much success that translates. And Joe Horn's a special case if you want to look into that as well. But I actually was on that bandwagon, I guess you could say. Like, I was still him on, but I thought he did impress, especially towards the end of preseason, enough to possibly make this 53-man roster. Obviously, Coach McDermott, Brand Bean, they didn't feel that way. But yeah, I think that the fact that we have him on the practice squad is great. I look forward to seeing his constant improvement. But kind of like, I compare him to kind of like Christian Wade. The CFL is a little bit different than the NFL, so it's a little different animal. Now, it's not like rugby where it's a completely different sport, but he still has to learn some things about the NFL that's maybe different from the CFL in order to get on this team. But, we have him on the practice squad now, which is why I thought he might be if he ended up anywhere. And I think he's eligible for another season even after this one, so we'll see what happens there.
Absolutely. I think for him he has to be on the practice squad the whole year to accrue a year, and I think it's also 6 games. If he's dressed for 6 games, that will count as a year against his practice squad. And Greg, being over at Cover One, and the film study goes on over there, and you guys are in Eric's ear and all those guys. Is Duke Williams cut and on the practice squad because of what Joe just said? He's not in the CFL. There's not really any press coverage because you can run up to the line, you can get free releases all day. Is it because of the Earnhardt Perkins system that Dable wants to run coming over from New England? He wants those short intermediate guys, hence hanging on to McKenzie, hence you got Cole Beasley in there now. Is that the direction they kind of really want to go, and that's why Duke was cut?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a fine line. I think that one, you have to respect the work that he put in, what they did, how he was able to find eventually a skill set that translated. I think some of the separation skills aren't maybe at the top end, but be honest with ourselves. Christian Wade and Duke Williams didn't get claimed by any other team, so it's not like we had this skyrocketing secret superstar ready to be scooped up by everybody. We got him back onto our practice squad. So we have to be relatively honest with ourselves there, but I think he earned that. I think there are plenty of other guys who would have liked to have gotten a practice squad spot and liked to have been around the team. And that's still maybe 150, 180 grand, depending on the workout bonuses. It's a good living. And with the way attrition works in the NFL, it's more likely than not that you do get a chance to make it up onto the roster during the season. So I think that Duke Williams is a great story. I think he deserves to be in the practice squad. I think he is in that middling range of NFL caliber player, and I don't think he's ever going to be much more than that final wide receiver 5'6" type guy that, you put him in a good spot. He can go up and get a touchdown pass over top of a corner in a jump ball situation. He's never going to go out and shake NFL caliber cornerbacks and get the separation to catch 70 balls, but in a tough spot, contributing on special teams, being able to play, run blocking advantages, I think he could contribute in the right situation. So we were all pretty hesitant, both with Christian Wade, Duke Williams, David Sills, a lot of fan favorites. We were trying to just level set with people that, hey, it's a good story, it's fun, but let's not get overexcited.
Right. Buffalo going for underdogs. I never heard such a thing.
He's no Brandon Riley, but
God, don't even. I think what comes into play with Duke Williams though is that maybe you could put him in that H-back role and jump over somebody because the tight end position was such in question. You got 2 rookies. You got Lee Smith coming back. You got you got all these guys on the team, and it was a question mark. Okay, who's going to go up and get the jump ball, those tough footballs in the red zone? And speaking to that point, we got some questions coming in on the chat real quick. The Ronald Enix, he says, do you guys see the Bills grabbing a big name after waivers? And I'm going to start with you, Joe, then I'll kick it over to Greg.
Big name, no. I mean, you look at what do you consider a big name? Most of your big names stayed with the team, of course. One guy that I'm really interested in is Treadwell from Minnesota. I think they waived him. He's a taller receiver. He could go get some balls. He was, I think, a first-round draft pick.
He was.
A few years back. At this point, what I would be looking for is who has size at wide receiver. That's something we're really lacking with the cuts that we made. And, everyone talked about how Duke Williams has size. Let's remember he had more size than anyone else, but he was still 6'3". Like, he wasn't like huge. But yeah, so I mean, big names. If they're big names, they're probably still with the team they signed with, obviously. But I would look to see if we have a wide receiver. I did mention when I did my 53-man projection video, I didn't think Eddie Yarborough or what turned out to be Acho were going to make this team. So maybe get another defensive end in there. But Eddie Yarborough currently is on the team, so maybe I'm wrong there.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice snag getting Yarborough on the practice squad, because I think he's right there in baseball. They always joke about the quad A guy who's better than AAA, but not quite at the major league level. And Yarborough's kind of that guy. Like, he dominated the other schmuck that was playing for the Vikings, but he couldn't quite do it in the game 1, 2, and 3. So he shows he's better than that throwaway guy, but he's not quite up at that level. So I'm happy to have him. If you get Trent Murphy, Jerry Hughes, Shaq Lawson dinged up, Eddie Yarborough is better than your street free agent defensive end guy. So I'm happy to have that. But I echo exactly what Joe said. There is no, magic guy sitting out there. I think that you can look at it in reverse. What are the spots on the Bills roster that you could still reasonably upgrade? I would say that our backup tackle is still feasible. You could bring in someone who's probably better than Connor McDermott. I'd be open to that. I don't think it's crazy to bring in a fourth tight end if you had Croft get a setback. I think that cornerback is interesting. We have 5, but that's counting Saran Neal only as a corner. It wouldn't shock me if they grabbed a guy there. We already saw it for anyone who wasn't up to date in the past hour or so here, that they signed Davis Webb as the practice squad quarterback instead of Tyree Jackson. So dual role there. One, he's a higher pedigree. He was a 3rd-round pick. He also spent 2 years with the Giants and this entire training camp with the Jets, who happened to be our first 2 opponents for this year. So you can see that kind of pickup. It was reported that we had Britton Colquitt on the way to Buffalo, and then his former coach convinced him to go to Minnesota. So that was, kind of a shot to the pills there. I would have preferred to get someone like that. I still would be open to Ryan Allen, and I can't lie, I'm not up to date on every punter that was waived around the league. So that might be a spot where there is an upgrade. I know that Joe Marino actually mentioned that maybe there's a silver lining in Colquitt going to Minnesota, because the young guy that they had is actually pretty decent. He's not as consistent or as tested as Colquitt, who's 34 and a veteran. Yeah. But if that could open up a frame there, that I could see something like that. That's the most likely, is at punter, but otherwise maybe tackle, maybe cornerback, something like that you could see, but I don't see it being, Joe's right, it's not a big name, but you could see a little shuffling at the back end.
I thought that Bean had something up his sleeve, with the shady, cutting shady, and I went at it from a number standpoint with LaShawn McCoy about, the Bills didn't think he was worth $9 million. They couldn't trade him, so the league didn't think he was worth $6 million, and then he goes with a familiar coach who gives him a $3 million guaranteed. So you start to see what the value of the running back, and we could talk for hours about how the running back position is either valued, devalued, and all these guys that are holding out trying to get more money. But it's interesting you say that, Greg, as far as, the Bills currently have 10 linemen on the team, and they have guys that can play multiple positions, and you still want to go get a swing tackle? I mean, I'm sorry. Did I?
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Well, I just like, just real quick, because I know it's a joke that we have, and I think it's pretty hysterical. Just once again, for the people that hear that term and hear the term, and people of Hashtag Nation, you guys make sure you go give Joe a follow. Make sure you give Greg a follow. But the term swing tackle should not be thrown around so loosely, and I'll have Greg explain it for you.
Yeah, so I get very picky about semantics and the language you use, because I think what we say matters. So when you step onto a football field, there is no position called swing tackle. That's not a spot you can go play. Yeah. So the term swing tackle gets now kind of blurred as every team's third offensive tackle is just obviously the swing tackle. And I think that's misused. And I think swing tackle is a description of someone who has the versatility to play both left tackle and right tackle, which not everyone has. Ty Nsekhe was that for Washington last year. And there are guys who have that skill set. But you also hear a lot of linemen joke about, oh, well, try to go to the bathroom and wipe with your other hand, and all the different things that come up about how awkward it is to flip sides and play right guard after being a left guard the whole time, or right tackle and being the left tackle the whole time. There are a lot of guys who can't do it. Deion Dawkins looked horrible at right tackle. So the assumption that just whoever your third tackle is going to step in as your swing tackle, I don't think is accurate. I think it's like calling someone a shutdown corner or a two-way tight end, that you can be a blocking tight end and a receiving tight end. That's not a position you play on the field. It's a description of your skill set and your ability and versatility. So the way that I got frustrated with it is saying that, man, I wish we had a swing tackle isn't the same as saying, hey, who's the next man up who's going to fill our open spot at swing tackle?
Yeah.
It's very likely the Bills don't have a swing tackle this year. We don't have a guy who can just automatically fill in, whether it's Nsekhe or whether it's Dawkins, and that's someone we'll have to target next offseason. When we lost Lader and Waddle, it was a bigger hit than most people assume.
Yeah, I totally agree. Joe, we got Bills fan 1970 coming in on the chat. When we started talking about big name players that we could possibly pick up and or trade for. What about Trent Williams? What do you think about Trent Williams?
Well, if you look at what Bean is trying to do, I think Trent Williams' money situation would come in factor at that point. I mean, I don't think and there's so many things wrong with Trent Williams, but as you guys mentioned when I commented, Paul mentioned about this, I think there would have to be something in some sort of agreement set upon, because now that he's on the franchise tag, we wouldn't be able to officially sign him to a longer deal until after the season. But I'm sure, like Paul, I think, said, that they would probably have some sort of agreement, understanding before he's on the contract. I've never been big on Trent Williams, but like I said, I don't think Bean is willing to take on that kind of a contract, or the kind of contract that he would demand. But like Greg just said, we could use another tackle maybe, and he could fill that spot. So
yeah, Greg, I seen that. Yeah, I mean, people are throwing some names in the chat. They're talking about John Fina. They're talking about Cyrus Quandro. Quandro, I think he couldn't really play anything.
Chris Hairston, that was the famous swing tackle that we had.
Oh, Chris Hairston, and then he went to San Diego. Poor guy. He had no idea. He had no clue. I think it does bring in something to question if Ty Nsekhe were to go down. I mean, that would be a huge blow. In my opinion, he's the second best lineman you have on the line that's starting. You got Mitch Morse number 1, you got him number 2. I know a lot of people might disagree and they may have their own opinions, but I love Ty Nsekhe over there. To me, he is, and I maybe falsely dubbed him, the Lorenzo Alexander of the offense. He's that veteran presence, the guy that's supposed to get everyone riled up and everyone together. And I like his role on there. But if he goes down, man, it's going to be a little scary for me, because the transition, I think it would be Ford going to right tackle, and then you bring Feliciano in, which I'm surprised that Feliciano doesn't have a spot on this offensive line, for as much as he impressed me during the preseason. Now, I know I shouldn't put everything into the preseason, but his versatility, the way, I think, Greg, you may have mentioned it at camp the one day when he was playing center. He snapped and got 10 yards downfield in a flash. Yeah, the guy's amazing.
He's surprisingly athletic. Now, I will say he's not really big. Now, I mean, by NFL lineman standards, when you see him next to Cody Ford and Ty Nsekhe, he's noticeably smaller than they are, but they're enormous humans, so it's not crazy. He's really good, and I think that speaks to the depth. The fact that guys like John Feliciano and Spencer Long aren't going to be starting for us is just an enormous luxury of what we've had in the past. And you guys talked about it. There's no scenario where we have a guy who's going to come in for for Ty Nsekhe or Deion Dawkins that's as good as shuffling out Cody Ford back to tackle. So even though, in a vacuum, would I prefer to have Cody Ford stick at one spot and just be consistent doing that? Yes. Do I think his consistency in development is more important than the best 5 guys guarding and protecting Josh Allen? No. So I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I'm willing to shuffle his, developmental curve in exchange for the best 5 guys being in front of Josh Allen. And unfortunately, that probably would involve him kicking out to tackle and bringing in Feliciano or Long.
Yeah. So Joe, let me just tell you, because we're going to be calling the games on Sportscaster all year. We're gonna give you play-by-play and color commentary, and everything's going to be swimmingly on Sportscaster. Hopefully that goes that way. Now we got a couple of people asked us questions earlier. Hashtag Nation came in and was like, listen. Number one, is Devin Singletary your unquestioned starter? And if so, what kind of numbers would you see for him in the 2019 season? What are some things? If we could just look forward past camp just a little bit, if we had to look forward past camp, what are some of the numbers that you see for Devin Singletary?
I might throw a little bit of a curveball. I don't think Singletary's the absolute number one guy going into the regular season. I think he earns that job as the season rolls on. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Yeldon back there to start, or maybe even Gore back there to start things off. I mean, talk about the kind of offense Dable likes to run. I mean, you talk about a lot, Mario, about how he tries to run that bigger offense. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see Yeldon start off and then see Singletary kind of take over as the year goes on, just because of, we talk about all the time, when you're going from college to the NFL, your first season, you don't get a single second to rest.
No.
Like you talk about how much yard or how many carries Singletary had with FAU. And now you talk about getting ready for the combine and then doing, I think he was at the Senior Bowl. Don't quote me on that, but I think he was there. But there's all this work going into the draft, and then you go to rookie mini camp. Like, it just keeps adding up. So that wears and tears at you. So I wouldn't expect them to put a huge load on him to start the season. But at the same time, he's probably the best back we got right now. So if you're talking about the type of stats we're expecting, if he gets anywhere between 800 and 1,000 yards this season, that would probably be where I would put him at. Everyone's talking about how he's the best fantasy, maybe rookie fantasy back, and that might be true. But that doesn't mean he's going to be the premier back. Let me say that. I don't think there's, other than maybe Jacobs in Oakland, I don't think there's a premier back that's going to be your rookie. So,
Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with the take on Singletary as a rookie. He's going to be in there, and I think that, one, you're spot on. McDermott's not handing anyone anything, so I'll be shocked if Frank Gore doesn't get the nominal start of the first snap, whether that's actually the majority of carries or not. He's going to do it on principle that Frank Gore has earned that right to be the starter. Then, I don't think anyone's going to be RB1, but I would say that Singletary gets 50% of the touches, and then Gore gets 35 and Yeldon gets 15, or 40, 30, and 30. Some mix like that where I could see Singletary getting the most touches out of the group, but not the majority or some huge lion's share, even if he got a decent amount to it.
Yeah, I mean, I always harken back to the fact that, and Bills fans don't want to hear this, but they have the rings to prove it. The New England Patriots, Dable coming over, that's the system he wants to run. It's It's a running back by committee system. You have a guy that can catch the ball. You have a guy that's can pound it inside the tackles. You have a guy that's kind of like a hybrid between both of those. And all them together, I mean, they don't have guys that are going to be flashing, 1,500-yard seasons. It's just not the nature of the beast, so to speak. So in that respect, I could see a lot of things. I just don't want the Bills to be too predictable when, you see Yeldon in the game, they're going to be throwing. You see Gora, they're going to be running, power. And, Singletary gives you the little question mark there. And, I mean, the Bills wouldn't have done this. The biggest hurdle of a running back is to pick up protections in the NFL. That's Trent Richardson is not in the NFL anymore because of that. Oh my God, he was bad. But that notwithstanding, you start talking. They can't. So Singletary has got a good head on his shoulders. He's able to pick up protections, especially from a guy who was just playing mainly in a shotgun offense, and he had a read style offense. So it was interesting to see how the Bills progressed to that level in that respect. And this is So Eric Jablonski comes in just really quick. I know we got less than 10 minutes left. Hashtag Nation, thank you for joining us tonight with this impromptu setup that we have. Eric Jablonski comes in. I'm going to start with Joe, and I'm kicking over to Greg. they could use some money to extend somebody. Who would you give an extension to? I mean, they already gave one to Jerry Hughes. Coming up, I mean, you got guys that are coming up. You got Dawkins, Milano, White, Poyer. You got all those guys coming up. Joe, who's the first guy that you would pay and why?
Oh, Poyer. Greg just said. I mean, when he said his name, it's to me, it's not even a question. I mean, Poyer has just been such a leader to me back there, and just a voice, especially like you see him hanging out with Tre'Davious White, and the way they get along and everything, and just we've seen, and Mario, you and I have actually talked about this, and I know it's a little bit of a different position, but when Coach McDermott was in Carolina and they got rid of Norman, all of a sudden, the secondary just imploded, and we don't want that to happen here. So we do need to think about Tre'Davious White too. We do need to think about that coming down the line. There's a couple of guys we do need to think about. I mean, we got a lot of great young talent, but you need someone to kind of like, what we did with Lorenzo Alexander this year, that 1 year extension, because we need that leadership on that defensive side of the ball. And so, I would also like to see us do that with the secondary.
Mm.
Yeah, those are good names. I think Poirier's automatic. I think Milano's automatic. I think that you can look at that. If we can do the 5-year extension with Trey White, exercise his 5-year option with the added extension, I think that's great. I think he's going to want to wait and see what our friend down in Jacksonville gets paid at cornerback first, because Trey's going to want to set the market there, and he's going to be upwards of 16, maybe 17 million a year. I think Poyer deserves 10 to 11 or 12 million. Mm-hmm. I think Milano's going to be in the 8 to 10 million dollar range, and that's fine because we have 90 some million dollars. So give them all healthy front-loaded deals. Those are the exact kind of guys you want to reward and show that are coming back. I know Ron brought it up in the chat. I wouldn't mind if Shaq Lawson came back on a reasonable deal. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind if Jordan Phillips comes back on a reasonable deal. We have a handful of 1 year guys later in Waddle, those kind of veteran depth guys. For hell, Frank Gore for all we know. But the big money is going to be Poyer, Trey White, Milano, Dawkins, if he has a good season, those kind of names, see where those kind of things come out.
Yeah, I at first when we were talking about the whole Clowney deal and people were talking about, I said, well, the Bills, you can't really get Clowney here from a financial standpoint. And initially in my mind, I kept saying, okay, if you wanted to sign him long-term, he's going to bleed into all these other contracts that we want to sign. And Bills fans, in December of this year is when the Bills can start renegotiating for those guys, because that's the time frame of the NFL season, how you're able to do that. I agree with you on Milano. However, as far as White goes, I'm not sure if it's the guy in Jacksonville they got to beat to the table. I think they have to beat. Well, Xavier Howard's already making so much money,
15 a year,
and he's within the division. I think they have to beat Lattimore to the table because they were both in the same draft. Eli Apple was in that draft, but he's been traded. I don't even know who the other, because we forget Trey White was the 4th corner taken off the board in that draft. So I think Lattimore is the guy that they got to try to beat to the table and down in New Orleans, because that's the guy he's going to probably be set up against, because it's the same draft and everything. So I think that's the guy. But you're right. I mean, but the one thing that I think Bills fans have to remember is that you're gonna pay guys for what they're going to produce for you in the future, not what they already gave you. And it's silly that Hyde and Poyer are making $10 million combined this year. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And with all the offseason signings that the Bills did, the majority of their signings were in the top 10. Like 6 of them were in the top 10 that they signed this offseason. So if they're going to make a run, and like Greg said, if you're going to front load deals, you do them now. You do them right now. Why you got $93 million under the cap? Are you serious right now? The Bills coming into the season, they had like 10 starters from last year that were under the 53 cutoff, like the 51 cutoff. It was insane. Oh man, it's crazy.
Yeah, they're in fantastic shape. And honestly, that's the biggest kudos to Brandon Beane, is the fact that, one, we have the fewest homegrown players in the NFL. We only have 26 drafted players on the roster. We did all of this through trades, waivers, free agents, undrafted free agents, all those kind of things to cobble together this roster. But we have a deep, talented roster, and now have the money to stack on there. We have 0 bad contracts. You can, I guess, debate that maybe Star Lotulelei is not the best value in the NFL, but he's a good player, and I'm not upset that we have him. It's fine. Like, I'm just saying, if you had to rank it, we used to have terrible contracts.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Couldn't wait to get out of, or you were having to every cut down day, you're having to be all right. Who is the most tolerable guy we can afford to cut because we have to figure out how to get this money back? We don't have to do that anymore. So now we don't have any big contracts we need to get out of next year. We don't have anyone that I even want to cut. I don't even know who it would be that we're looking to release. Literally, it's like Patrick DeMarco is maybe the only financially driven one, and that's because you saved $2 million. There just isn't a bad contract that you're trying to get out of. So they can hand out several $8 to $10 to $15 million deals next year and still be fine. They could hand out a bunch of those. They could re-sign Trey White at the top of the market, give Deion Dawkins a weird amount of money, give Matt Milano $10 million a year, give re-sign Shaq Lawson, give him Trent Murphy's deal, give him 3 years $21 million, 3 years $24 million. Stack up all those contracts and still have like $40 million in cap space. So they're in fantastic financial position. And granted, would adding someone like a Clowney or that level of player complicated it? Sure. But I do a lot of math and accounting at work all day. I care relatively about the Bills spending money, but it's not my money. You can spend all the pagula bucks you want. Give me good players. I'll deal with those problems. If we get to the point where our problem is, oh no, how are we going to re-sign all the amazing players that we've acquired? Bring me those problems.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. That's what we're dealing here with her. I really think that Brandon Beane has dirt on pretty much everybody in the NFL and how he's able to make these deals.
He is a wizard.
He is. They do sign those 1-2 year proof deals are amazing, and getting guys selling them on the fact that, listen, we're building something really good here up in Buffalo. You want to be a part of this, or you don't want to be a part of it. So I mean that alone I think is amazing. So, all right, we've come to the conclusion really quick for you guys, because I know I'm going to talk to Joe a bunch. I'm going to talk to you, Greg. But for Hashtag Nation, Joe, what's your record what's Bill's records this year?
I did my prediction video. I have us going 11-5 this season, and I don't see why we can't finish 11-5. I do have us still finishing a game below the Patriots, but we do split with them, so that's just as important to me as the 11-5 record.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
I love it. That is strong, and I respect it. I think that's absolutely in the range of possible outcomes. I think the fact, the Vegas over-under is 6.5, I think is scary. And that I think we're closer to 9-7, but I think if the ball bounces our way, 10-6 and 11-5 is absolutely in play. So I would project us to go 9-7 if I had to guess right now, but I could absolutely see the 11-5.
Look at you guys going all logic. Did you guys dub me the super fan tonight? Do I have to be super fan? We're going 14-2. All right. That's it. All right. So
I would love to speak on what Greg said real quick too about Vegas. So I don't know if you guys are gamblers. Unfortunately, I am. But so we started out, the over-under in Vegas was 6, and I bet on us yesterday, and it's now 7. So when Vegas starts bumping it up like that, something's going on, and it's good for us. So
yeah, Joe, it takes a lot of money to move those lines.
Yes.
I saw the odds at 6.5 at -180. Like you almost had to bet double your money to win anything back at 6.5.
Right.
That takes a ton of money for them to finally be like, all right, we'll move it to 7. So the fact that it moved from 6 to 6.5 to 7 means that there is a lot of money that's out there on the Bills having at least a pretty good season.
Right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, give these guys a follow. Joe from Believers Talk, Greg from Cover One. We are out. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hashtag Nation, and go Bills.